Good afternoon. We're live for another installment of the Ovadia Heart Health live stream. And today I'm here with Krisna Hanks, the Director of Employee Wellness at Ovadia Heart Health. She's also a health coach, and she's got a long career of related experience from coaching, which came after a professional dance career. And I'll let her talk about how she got into this position as we start this off. Before we kick off this live stream, I got to read the medical disclaimer just to keep everything legal. Any services or information provided today are provided for educational and informational purposes only and are not substitutes for professional advice. The services you're advised to seek the care of a qualified doctor or medical professional when undertaking any changes to nutrition, diet, or fitness, including anything you hear us talk about today. If you'd like information regarding a medical consultation with Ovadia Heart Health, please email us at team@ifixhearts.com. And if you're looking to improve the metabolic health of your workplace, go to ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. Now that we got that out of the way, Krishna, we're going to talk today about the exercise pillars for longevity. That's something that I have a lot of interest in, and I know you have a lot of expertise. So why don't you tell our viewers here, what got you to where you are with both employee wellness and Ovadia Heart Health as a health coach, and where exercise fits into the picture, especially for those of us who may be over 50 or 60 or beyond.
Uh, well, great to be here with you, Chris. And I am thrilled about this particular session because movement is definitely a passion of mine. You alluded to that a little bit. I'll give you the quick Krishna Cliff Notes version of how I ended up being so passionate about movement. And that is, grew up in the Midwest as a young girl, started dancing at age 3, taking dance lessons. That morphed into quite a long career, having danced professionally for more than 33 years, traveling US and Europe. All throughout that whole time, though, having grown up with a dad who was a basketball coach, movement was something inherent in our family. My brother also was a basketball coach for some time. So coaching, exercise, team sports, even though I didn't play any team sports, that was really not an option for younger girls in my generation. I did the usual things, gymnastics and cheerleading. But while I was dancing, I also taught dance. I taught gymnastics. I was a personal trainer. And I'm just fascinated by the moving body. Once I stopped dancing, I went back. I got my master's degrees. I have a master's of science in kinesiology because I wanted to know more of the science of the moving body. And throughout this, that all kind of segued into coaching, and particularly health coaching, metabolic coaching, because at the end of the day, exercise is super vital and important. And we're going to dive into that. But it is the whole picture that really makes someone healthy. Your sleep, your getting regular sunshine, your stress level, and your nutrition that is metabolically sound. But that's kind of just a snapshot of why I'm passionate about this theme.
Oh, great. That's a great introduction. And I wonder where to start. I think, for one thing, a little quote that came up. I think you've probably alluded to this. I may have gotten it off of your website, which has so many excellent articles. Is the best exercise is the one that you'll actually do. I want to get your thoughts on that, and that might be a good starting point because a lot of people maybe are in a situation like I was in 9 or 10 years ago, where I was very overweight and very out of shape, not knowing where to begin. And I had tried and started and then stopped and then started again. And how does one, get the hope that they can actually sustain something? And what steps can someone take to get going in the first place?
Absolutely. And I just also want to throw this right out on the table, and is that um, wherever you are, today's a good day to start. If you haven't been doing anything, just moving a little bit more. And even Dr. Jason Hahn, physical therapist that we had on live stream yesterday, talked about just doing a little bit more than you're doing, moving more around your house. I also think for individuals, and you mentioned you had such a successful weight loss journey yourself, Chris, is that, and it's impossible and it's overwhelming sometimes to think, where do I start? What do I do? Do I go to the gym? Do I, find some other kind of movement modality? What about my diet? I think it's really important in the beginning, if you haven't been doing any type of movement, is to start moving more in your house, then start moving more outside, and just start with that. And I do want to also say, you can't exercise away a poor diet. And that, the old Jack LaLanne phrase, I think he says, exercise is king, nutrition is queen. Together you have a kingdom. I might have mixed them both up, but either way, you've got the kingdom there. Those two pieces do need your attention wherever you're starting. But I think also walking is underrated, even for people who are super fit. I know Mark Sisson talks about walking a lot, and he's 70, been in this business for decades. I think it's a great tool also for individuals because it's low cortisol, it's low stressful, it's very inexpensive. You put your shoes on, you go. Even if you're just making circles around your neighborhood, if you don't feel your neighborhood is safe, or you do have the luxury to go to a park. So I think that might be your first step, is just getting some steps in. And I always like to just give some grace to people. We've got this idea these days, oh, I need to get 5,000 steps, or I need to get 10,000 steps. Doing more steps than you're already doing is a thumbs up, is a win. And I think that by establishing maybe something that is doable, then you can maybe move on to the next level. So if you're thinking about sustainability.
Oh, excellent way to get started on this. I want to go into the I think it's five that you've got listed in an article that you wrote, 5 pillars for longevity, 5 exercise pillars. And that was the comment that you made about Mark Sisson, who is actually the guy that started the Primal Health Institute coaching program, which is, I got a recommendation from you that I take that course, and I got my master's certification back in December, and now have joined the team at Ovadia Heart Health as a health coach. I just saw Mark post in the last week that he is in his, I guess, early 70s, like you mentioned. He's in the top 5% of people his age for VO2 max, and he hasn't even run a single mile in the last 20 plus years. So he does a lot of walking, which sort of lends proof to what you just said. But now can we however you want to take it on, tell me about the 5 pillars and what they are, and we can break this down however you like. But I think people want to know what are the 5 pillars.
Absolutely. And I again, I'm enjoying every minute of this conversation, because I'm a firm believer that exercise is one of those keys to us having a good quality life. And that's actually what it's about, is that quality of years, not the quantity of years. But let's just back up one piece just for our listeners. And I often will interchange these words. I see 2 big buckets when we talk about, let's just say, movement and exercise. I'm going to use that word generally. One is structured exercise. That would be the things that you're doing in a structured manner. Think resistance training, or definite, modalities like Pilates that have set exercises, a set order of exercises, things, structured exercise that you might be doing for a particular sport that is a defined set of exercise. And then there's just physical activity, or what I will call daily movement, just general movement, your house chores, your gardening, your things that you might be building, in seasonal, snow shoveling, those kind of just activities. Those I see as kind of two big buckets. When we say physical fitness, then we're kind of narrowing it down to say, how are you doing on these pillars that we're going to talk about? Pillars of not only what I say longevity, but of trying to, construct a body that can handle, that's resilient. We call it fit, able to bounce back, less injuries. And that, in my mind, also includes metabolic health, but that's a whole other conversation. Just so that we kind of keep making see the forest, but also then sort of look more detailed on that. So to what I consider my pillars, I've got number one these days, that's strength. Mm-hmm. That wherever you look, if you're, following, we've already mentioned Mark Sisson, or you're following Mark Hyman, or Gabrielle Leon, or Mike Mutzel, or Doug McGough, and the list goes on and on and on, right? I already mentioned Jack LaLanne, is that the quality and strength of your muscular system, and let's say we've got over 600 or so in the body, that you are working to create strength. And again, that's number one on my list. And I know you post online, especially on X, lots of videos of you in your home gym, Chris. Yeah, I see you working on strength.
Yes, I'm a big believer in strength, and for a lot of reasons. I definitely buy into the idea that we want to save our muscle, build our muscle for those later years. I was just at the supermarket this morning, and the guy in front of me online had a huge black eye, and I started talking to him, and he told me that he had fallen three times in the last like 6 months. But the most recent one caused him to break ribs. He's probably in his early 80s, and he's very frail and weak. And it made me think, like he was completely with it mentally, but he's at great risk of harm. And this is just, what happens to too many people. So I will let you take it from there. But it's strength training, so important.
And it's frightening. It's funny because one of the notes I wrote to myself for today's live stream was, and this comes straight from the CDC, falls are the leading cause of injury for adults aged 65 or older. Over 14 million, so that's around 1 in 4 adults, older adults, fall every year. And your gentleman, you met this morning 3 times already. Another side note, which you should investigate this topic with Dr. Ovadia or with our nurse practitioner, Lisa Simmons, is I see a lot of people pointing to too low of blood pressure, right? Many people on extreme blood pressure lowering medications are more likely to fall. So making sure that that's monitored correctly. But yeah, strength is a number one. And I just put a little personal note is, I've already talked about, I had a career as a professional dancer. I didn't really start seriously strength training till 7 years ago, age 60. I'm 67. And you could start at any age. And I hear Dr. Ben Bokikio say that all the time. Ben's great book and great approach, 15 Minutes to Fitness. So I would encourage any of our listeners or anyone, and I see we've got Cecile and Bonnie, Teresa, commenting. It's wonderful to see you both there, but say any time you're ready to start, you can start building muscle. And there's plenty of research to show behind that. Luc van Loon, I've mentioned him. He's a wonderful exercise physiologist from the Netherlands. He can show in his lab that he can take an 80-year-old and a 30-year-old with the same, and again, caveat this with same protein intake, good protein intake with good resistance training, and the muscle looks the same. That's pretty impressive. But I don't want to spend all our time on the strength piece, but I see it top of the list in the exercise pillars. Next on the list, and I kind of couple these together, mobility and flexibility. And I want to differentiate between the two, and somewhat harder. And I think somewhere in my background, I was Italian because I do talk a lot with my hands, even though I'm from the Midwest. We are a little bit, I would call a stretching obsessed nation. Everywhere you look, you see people stretching, prior to doing activities. And yes, flexibility, the ability of your muscles to, extend and come back to their normal shape is important. However, when we talk about our joints, and we see a lot of this with frail individuals, there's not a lot of mobility. So if we even imagine, and when we talk about the feet, that your individual you met at the grocery store this morning, it could be he doesn't have good mobility in his ankles and toes and feet. This is often true with many older people. They wear shoes all the time. They don't have a lot of good mobility. But mobility is related to the ability of your joints to go within, hopefully, the full range of motion. And that is different than the flexibility of a muscle. Two components important. Your mobility, you might think, is more related to those joints, what we call a ball and a socket, like your hip joint, like your shoulder joint, those that have a higher range of motion, which is you want that, yeah, right? And the mobility piece has to do also with the fluid within your joints. And this is where you can even go down the whole rabbit hole of your nutrition. Is your nutrition helping not only your muscular system, but your joints have less inflammation? Thus, the mobility factor is higher. I see you're ready for a question. Yeah.
So, Krishna, I think that I've got the strength part pretty well nailed down, at least for my age. I suspect that my mobility and flexibility could probably use some work. What kind of things would I do, and what kind of time investment would I need to devote to making some improvements to mobility and flexibility? And what would my benefits of doing that be?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I'll just say personally, I do one of my sort of issues in my past history as a dancer that came a little bit more later was I had some lack of mobility in one of my hips in particular. And fast forward to now, to keep that hip mobile, I do about 10 times a week of hip focused mobility and what I call spine mobility as well as ankle mobility. It takes me 10 minutes, 2 times a week. And I've narrowed it down to the joints that seem to need the most focus for me, that are what I would list as a little more vulnerable because of all those years of a specific training that required a lot of those joints. There's an individual named Steve Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
He's a longtime jiu-jitsu champion trainer who found as he got into his 60s that often tight hips or other tight joints were prohibiting people from doing good, clean motions successfully. He has some very inexpensive joint mobility videos on his website. I think it's Steve Maxwell SC, Strength and Conditioning, I think is what the S and the C stand for.
Okay.
And I think it's your first step on that would be think about where you're feeling your motion is restricted, right?
Okay.
So is it a shoulder? Is it an ankle? Is it a wrist? Oftentimes, people who are on the computer or have done too many push-ups in their historical past have injured their wrists. To start thinking about the areas that need most attention, start there. If you want to expand to doing mobility exercises for the whole body and you've got the time, go for it.
Great.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'll look up Steve Maxwell, and I'll even when we write an article for this episode, we'll drop some links in.
yeah.
So thanks for
And
that.
one more person too, I think, who's done some really good work and is the knees over toes. And I can
Uh,
never remember his name.
I
And
follow him on X for sure. I was just looking at his posts this morning, as a matter of fact.
yeah, so particularly, that whole idea of taking the knee over the toes for good ankle mobility. And definitely someone to investigate.
Great. So then I think we're on to balance and coordination.
We are. You teed it up with the example of someone who had fallen. And, balance and coordination are so crucial, but for lack of a better word, they're not sexy. You don't see anybody in the gym, very often standing on one leg, practicing their balance, or, even, lifting a leg up like in a marching step and trying to balance. But you'll see them for hours sitting there flexing their muscles. And maybe part of the reason we don't focus enough on balance and coordination is that, I don't know. Coming from the dance world, balance and coordination is so crucial to your career that you train in it a lot. I think the simplest ways, because I think part of what we're doing here is also saying, well, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. I use this when I brush my teeth, morning and evening. I'll stand on one leg or practice it. So I'm getting couple things done at one time in that, or maybe even doing something different that can work that area while doing some dishes. I think any movement, and this is where we get to how things coordinate, anything that you can do to even just start to practice that. I like to say, if you've got kids, go to the park and practice walking on the different terrains, one foot in front of the other, or walking backwards. It's a Chinese tradition that people gather on the street or in a park and walk backwards together. I don't know if you've ever seen any videos on that. A very interesting cultural thing.
I have seen.
Yeah, yeah. We
I see a lot of people that seem to be the walking backwards seems like a great idea. So that's something I'd be
Yeah.
terrible at.
People who have a treadmill, don't put the treadmill on, but you can even walk backwards without the treadmill going. Holding on is a good way. But also part of the balance and coordination is getting your toes to have mobility. And I think the first step is walk barefoot in your house. Many people even walk around their house with shoes on all the time. And I would love to see that more individuals start with just that, grounding has taken off in the last couple of years, people walking outside barefoot. Always make sure you're safe with that. But I think that's really a first step. Walking more barefoot, seeing if you can gain more mobility in your feet, and then start simple, balancing on one leg. Can you hold it for a couple of seconds? Can you hold it for more than 5 seconds? If you want to really jump to the new level, can you stand on one leg and close your eyes? Practicing that piece. The coordination, I think, is inherent if you're doing some forms of structured exercise. Um, Lifting weights requires some coordination with that, with strength training. If you work with a trainer, I have the luxury, I work with a trainer, Josh Espinosa. I've been working with him since I started in 60s. He does a lot of three-dimensional type movements within our strength training program that require that balance and coordination. So there's ways to weave that piece in with what you're already doing. Um,
Yeah, excellent. Man, I could definitely work on number 2 and number 3, the mobility and flexibility, balance and coordination. So I'm going to put that on my list.
yeah, and then we're on to the endurance piece, and I think this is a an interesting maybe evolution of not only the exercise physiology. I come from the kinesiology world, and kinesiology as in the science of movement. In Are we talking about just cardiovascular endurance or just physical endurance? And in my kind of perspective, and there's all kinds of opinions, I see endurance somewhat of a kind of mix of those. Where we've grown away from, and I think there's, you know, good research to show that you can get really good cardiovascular training with high intensity strength training, or what people call HIIT. And I would encourage people, if you really want to dig into the science of that, read Body by Science by Doug McGuff, and or look at any of his videos, who really shows that high intensity strength training is a form of cardiovascular training. He likes to say there is no such thing as cardiovascular training from a physical standpoint. And my goal is, how can we get people to not only do exercise where we started out, what's the best exercise, the one you'll do, but be consistent with it. It's that consistency which leads to endurance. And then we see you can build endurance from a variety of modalities. You gave the anecdote about Mark Sisson, who's saying he's in the top 5%. And he's walking, doing strength training, now and then doing sprinting. And that's the whole little sidebar we can take if you want to. But I think endurance is, can are you able to walk up a hill and still talk to whoever you're walking with? The old talk test of endurance. Are you consistently able to maintain the weights that you're lifting, and maybe even upping the weight? You get good feedback on that if any of your listeners use the X3 system, because you get a strength score after that. And, endurance for all of us at our age levels is going to be different. What endurance I need for myself is very different than someone who's at the peak of their professional sports or dance career.
Am I coming through okay, Krisna?
I hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
I'm hoping
Okay,
our
great.
listeners
I
can.
think my connection has been wavering. I think my own personal experience has been that I think a lot of us have no idea how much potential we have. And if you take endurance and cardio slowly and progress over time, you can go as far as you want, probably. As a 50-year old, the thought of running 3 miles was not something that I thought was even reasonable. And then at 58, I ran a marathon. That's a full marathon. Never would have dreamed that to be possible. And then, I see people, especially when I deliberately associate myself with other people that are like-minded, I see people that are doing things even so much loftier than I've ever dreamed. So I think we don't give ourselves enough credit as to what we're capable of.
Absolutely. And this is a good point to bring up. Joseph Pilates was the inventor of the Pilates method. I'm a big fan of that. I'm classically certified in Pilates by 2 organizations. And I'm just going to paraphrase one of his quotes: was true physical fitness um, was the ability to have energy left over for you to enjoy life. And that I totally butchered the exact phrase, but the whole idea being our endurance, our fitness level should be capable of providing us enough energy to still have energy for those other things of being with our loved ones, taking walks, if you have kids, playing with your kids or grandkids, that you're not completely depleted at the end of the day, that you're not capable of doing something else. I would put endurance also in just that package as well. And it's not necessarily in that direction. And that would be the extreme of what Mark Sisson calls chronic cardio, where you're on the treadmill for hours every day, or you say, oh, I need to get my 15 or 20,000 steps in, and then don't have any energy over at the end of the day to spend with those that you care the most about.
We're getting some comments. A lot of people watching this on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Here's one from Bob Everson, who I think we both know from some of our other online chats. And thanks, Bob, for watching and commenting. We appreciate it.
Nice.
And let's see, we got one from Cecile, who's been so instrumental in the metabolic health community. Thanks for watching, Cecile. We appreciate the feedback. And everybody should know that if they're on LinkedIn or YouTube, you have the ability to make comments and share your input. One second before we go on, Krisna, I just wanted to put up the contact. Let's see if I can get this to get on the screen. Oh, there we go. It's like misbehaving on me. If anybody wants to contact iFix Hearts and set up a call with our metabolic health coordinator, just visit us at ifixhearts.com/talk, and you can set up a real easy, low pressure consultation where you can get some information about the practice, whether it be coaching and lab consultation and consultations with Dr. Ovadia, or whether it be an interest in the employee wellness program. We do have a separate link for that. And since Krisna is the director of employee wellness, I'm going to put that on the screen as well. Let's see, I'm having like all sorts of trouble with the links. Let you get back, Krisna. You go ahead and keep talking, and I will try to get the right link on the screen, and we'll just continue.
This is a good time, and yes, Cecile is doing so much work with the whole metabolic mind and metabolic multiplier efforts. And it brings up that point that I think we want to, or at least I want to highlight, and I know you do because you're a believer in this, but we're talking the pillars of longevity from an exercise standpoint. Well, we've already mentioned that does not diminish the cruciality of good metabolic health. And we're with the explosion of the metabolic psychiatry, I'm calling it a field these days, because the research that they're producing and the amount of good influence they are doing in the field of improving your mental health. But you can't separate these things. Good metabolic health equals good mental health. Good metabolic health and good physical health go hand in hand. every aspect of our wanting to create vibrant, healthy bodies with good lifespan is somehow tied to good metabolic health. I truly believe that. I mean, I saw that firsthand. The reason I even came down the rabbit hole of metabolic health was due to my diminishing physical health. At the end of my dance career, 33 years plus, I had severe joint and tissue issues that everyone tried to say it was early onset arthritis from long career, or that I had fibromyalgia, I had some other weird autoimmune disease. But the short version is I had been a strict vegetarian for 20 years that led to high levels of inflammation. And simply through changing up my diet, adding in mobility drills, so what we talked about, adding meat back into my diet, it was that cluster of things that I did that made the whole difference in the fact that I'm moving and stronger, better now at 67 than I was at 45. And I think it's always good whenever we talk about movement to keep that idea that it is that combination of things. And metabolic health, and we're seeing these great improvements. When people improve their metabolic health, they improve their mental health. And everything is connected, just like the old song, you know, ankle bone, knee bone, all the way up the food chain there.
Oh yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It's let's see, man. We've spent longer on this call than we on this live stream than we usually do. I have all day, but I don't want
I'm good.
to. I don't know what your schedule is like, Krisna. But
I'm good.
why don't let's see. Go ahead.
I've got one just maybe to touch on, because I get this question a lot. What do you think, Krisna, about sprinting? And it is at the top of Mark Sisson's exercise pyramid, which I think if you're interested in looking at that, is a very interesting model. Has at the bottom daily movement, breaking up your sitting time, and we have a whole white paper on that. I would encourage people to investigate. Next is lift heavy things. That's your resistance training. And then, you know, I think next up is, you know, working on those other pillars that we talked about a little bit, the balance, the coordination. And I may be sort of playing with the pyramid, but at the top of the pyramid, here's sprinting. And that's just doing something that I like to make it simple. Get your heart rate up a little bit. Like, for instance, we have a place that we hike on the weekends, which is straight up, almost kind of a 1 mile straight up. You can really get your heart rate up. It's a good place to practice nasal breathing, which I'm a big fan of. I want to caveat anyone who wants to do sprinting is be safe. Don't be sorry. If you haven't been doing anything, don't start with sprinting. Start with walking. If you want to incorporate sprinting, I do also like the idea that you do it only when you're fully rested, maybe once a week, maybe every 10 days, and do it safely. I think a row machine is a great place to do some sprinting, a stationary bike, something you're not going to fall off of, maybe in the swimming pool if you're a swimmer. And only if you've been training and you're in good physical shape to then start to maybe try something that would be sprinting on the ground. But that's not for everybody. I think you can get your heart rate up by walking briskly, going uphill, changing your terrain on that. But those things, it all comes back in essence to mixing up your training. What we've been talking about is basically in the colloquial of fitness is cross training, any different, utilizing different modalities, things that challenge your balance, things that definitely work to improve your strength. They're all part of making your body have some challenges that keep you fit.
Hey, Krisna, I didn't disappear on you. My camera just died because of my internet. So I'm still here, and I think I probably should keep it off so that I don't keep losing bandwidth. But at any rate, you're doing such an excellent job of going through. Are there any more points that you want to bring up on the exercise pillars, or anything else that you want to say?
Well,
And
I think
this is
we
a conversation that I think, just based on the interest, we've gotten so many comments. I think this is a topic that we could revisit frequently. There's so much. I mean, I think we're just scratching the surface, but anything else that sort of goes in this conversation?
um you know I'm gonna just do a couple things and maybe to try to kind of put a bow on this, wrap it up. But if we think, I copied down what is the definition of physical fitness. And this is from one of my old kinesiology textbooks. It's one's ability to execute daily activities with optimal performance, endurance, and strength, with the management of disease, fatigue, and stress, and reduce sedentary behavior. And that last piece, again, I'd mentioned we have a white paper on that. Breaking up your sitting time is one of the important pillars to living vibrantly. The exercise, the structured exercise is super important, with that strength training being high on the list. But breaking up the sitting time also needs our attention. And the kind of maybe final piece I want to encourage everyone is, you can start anywhere. There is no perfection to this. There's finding the combination of things that work best for you, and always tapping into your why. Why do you want to be healthy? Why do you want to be fit? What also do you enjoy? And because if you're not getting pleasure out of it, it's going to be a slog every time. And sometimes you might just need to mix it up. You might need to let something, park it to the side for a while, go do something else. I like to say to people, if you're burned out on your exercise, go take a dance class. Go try something unstructured, or do something in a group form where you feel some energy and you feel inspired, and knowing that any movement is beneficial in the long run.
Well, awesome. This has been a tremendous conversation, Chris. And I think we set the record for the longest one, and it felt like 15 minutes as far as I was concerned. I've learned a lot, and I've got a bunch of notes to visit. I know that I'll spend 2 hours just going through some of the looking up some of the people that you mentioned. So I really appreciate your insights and wisdom, and I look forward to doing it again sometime in the near future. Let me put this. Let's see. I think my connection has improved somehow.
Yes.
I do not know what happened, but I apologize if I
It, it
faded
was
out
all
on
good.
anybody.
It's
Um,
all good. And I would encourage, as I'm obviously the director of employee wellness for Ovadia Heart Health, is however you can in your workplace, encourage movement, encourage people to break up their sitting time. If you're wanting to start a walking group, do it. And bring in some people that might inspire your company to think about the cruciality of exercise for longevity.
and I know, Krishna, that you already mentioned the white papers, but there's 4 white papers by Krishna and 1 by Jen Cleveland, our director of diabetes education. You can get all 5 white papers just by visiting ovadiahearthealth.com/white paper, and they're free, and they're a great read. And I know there's more on the way. I know we're working on another one of yours, Krishna, for release in the near future. So I encourage anybody that's got an interest in that, visit the link. Anything else before we go, Krishna?
No, thank you all for tuning in. And let us know topics you're interested in. Obviously, this was one that was hit or lit a fire for me as well as for Chris. We're both passionate about the movement piece, and keep tuning in. And thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everybody.